Welcome back to 8-Bit Joystick. CRT TVs are the best, most authentic way to play retro video games, and the time to get one is now. So, you actually do it. You followed my guide and you tracked down a CRT TV, you got it home and hooked up your Sega Genesis and fired up Sonic the Hedgehog, and it looks like magic. And then you start to wonder, man, why does this look so much better than it ever did on my 4K LCD TV? And the reasons why have nothing to do with nostalgia, it's technology. The secret to making these games look perfect isn't a fancy upscaler. It's in this big, beautiful box of glass, lightning, and magic. The case for CRT Superiority for playing pre-HD video games, that's before the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, it's not like LCD TVs are inherently bad technology, but they are fundamentally wrong technology for playing classic retro video games. But first, if you would like to join the Scanlines Society, just hit subscribe to 8-Bit Joystick to make sure that you're not going to miss any videos. Graphic artists in the 8-bit, 16-bit, and early 3D eras didn't just design their graphics on computers using CRT monitors, they designed them for CRT screens. They used the CRT TV itself as a tool, exploiting how it rendered graphics and its flaws to create their video game artwork and take their games to the next level. The CRT screen wasn't just a display tool, it was part of the art process. It was the final paintbrush that consoles used to draw graphics. The video game art was, in a very real way, completed by the CRT television screens. Retro media, including video games, isn't just best viewed on CRT TVs, it was fundamentally authored for them in every step of the process. The artists at Sega would design sprites on high-end PC monitors, but they always previewed how they would look on regular, off-the-shelf CRT TVs to see how they would look in gamers' living rooms. So, viewing these video games on an LCD TV without accounting for these properties is like listening to a vinyl record as an unmastered digital file. You might get all the technical details, but the intended warmth, the character, and the fundamental nature of the art is lost by doing that. There is a huge fundamental difference in how CRT TVs and LCD TVs go about displaying an image. An LCD TV uses a sharp, sterile grid on a screen. The LCD screen will change the intensity of the brightness of the red, green, and blue pixel areas, and in doing so, it will draw a very hard, very sharp pixel image. And this is not what the artists who were designing games during the 8-bit, 16-bit, and 32-bit era intended. A CRT TV display, on the other hand, uses a scanning electron gun to cause lights of glowing phosphor in a vacuum tube to light up. There is a focused stream of electrons from one or more electron guns located in the rear of a large sealed glass vacuum tube. These electron beams are guided by powerful magnetic fields generated by a deflection yoke. And these electron guns move horizontally, line by line, very fast, several times a second, and it will cause the phosphors on the inside of a glass vacuum tube to glow in different colors. This has a distinct visual characteristic that the LCD TV just can't replicate. By their very nature, the LCD pixel grid comes across as very sharp and very sterile. The same pixel image can have so much more warmth. A CRT's pixels are non-square rounded spots of glowing phosphor that bloom and bleed into each other just a little bit. As the phosphor glows, it creates a natural, incredibly pronounced anti-alias effect compared to the sharp, jagged edges of an LCD screen. The same art is beautifully rounded and smooth on a CRT TV. It's the difference between a sculpture made out of Legos and one made out of clay. The way a CRT's phosphors emit light has a glow that self-illuminated pixels on a modern LCD screen just can't replicate. Now with bloom and slight smoothing, a CRT image just feels alive. This gives the characters warmth and creates a tangible, organic quality that is perceived by your brain as more alive than the mathematically precise pixel grid of a digital LCD display. True blacks. An LCD TV creates blacks by blocking light, which is always illuminated, which means it can never be truly black. And there's always some light bleed. Even if it's displaying a black pixel image, you can tell that an LCD TV is on. Now, a CRT TV creates black by not shooting any electrons at the phosphors on that part of the screen. So you get these perfect inky blacks that just gives games a different level of contrast and vibrancy that LCD TVs just can't pull off. There are times that you can't tell if a CRT TV is even on if it's displaying a black screen, and you're never going to get that with an LCD TV. This makes games with darker graphics like horror games or early retro games have a much different effect. The simple graphics of the Atari and ColecoVision era just comes across as more alive on a CRT screen, and it's because of the contrast between the big, warm pixels with a soft glow against pure inky blacks that you can only get on a CRT screen. Classic retro game consoles use a technical trick that CRT TVs handle perfectly, but LCD TVs completely misunderstand. A CRT TV instinctively produces scanlines, an artifact of the electron gun moving from left to right, and then skipping down and alternating with a line of unlit pixels. This line of blackness is a visual characteristic that many fans of retro video games think is absolutely essential to the classic look of 8-bit and 16-bit games. And artists designed their games with this effect in mind. The analog connection between the consoles and the television gets even weirder when we talk about the 240p signal. Now, 240p is not a real television standard, it's a hack. CRTs were initially built for 480i NTSC interlaced standards. And I do acknowledge the existence of PAL TVs, but for this video, I'm going to talk about NTSC because that's what America and Japan used. The TV's electron gun would paint the picture by first drawing all the odd-numbered lines, and then it would zip back and draw the even-numbered lines, 30 times a second. So what did game developers do? They basically told the TV's electron gun, ignore those even lines, just keep drawing the odd ones over and over again. They figured out that they could manipulate the video signal itself. They sent out a modified video signal that told the electron gun to only draw the same 240 lines of image data over and over again at 60 times a second. It never even drew that second even field. Now, the blank unscanned lines between the bright lines creates the iconic scanline effect. They are a physical part of the display process. It is not a filter and they are not a flaw. It is integral to the aesthetic. These lines add a distinct texture to the image, and they help blend the colors vertically, and they help give the pixel art more of a cohesive, less blocky appearance. Now, modern LCD screens, on the other hand, get totally confused by a 240p signal. The smart processor in an LCD TV just sees this 240p signal and assumes that it must be a 480i signal and tries to deinterlace it. And it completely mangles the image, and it can create a shimmering, artifact-riddled mess even before it begins to upscale the image, and this creates lag. And we'll talk about that later on. A CRT TV is an analog, dumb device. It doesn't think about drawing the image as it draws it. It doesn't process it. It just executes and draws the image that the game console tells it to draw. This direct control of the electron gun is essential for retro game systems. Game developers knew about this and they built it directly into their graphics engines. And maybe one of the simplest reasons why CRTs are so good at playing classic games, they have the right shape. Beyond that, a CRT is malleable. It has no one set resolution. It can handle multiple resolutions just perfectly, while an LCD screen is forever constrained to a single native resolution, and it has to fake everything else. And in that way, a CRT screen is simply more flexible for retro consoles. Also, stop stretching your games to a 16:9 full screen on a widescreen display. These games and consoles were designed for a 4:3 box, and the CRT screen fits that perfectly with no distortion, no black bars, and no weird scaling. So, what if I told you that there is an entire genre of video games as old as video games themselves that is literally completely unplayable on classic hardware without a CRT TV? It isn't just a matter of preference, it's a hard technological incompatibility. Light guns like the NES Zapper, the Super Scope, and the Sega Menacer and the Namco Gun Con only function correctly with CRT TVs, and they are 100% non-functional on LCD TV displays. The light gun technology relies on precise timing of a CRT's electron beam scanning across the screen. Now, going back to the first light gun games, courtesy of Gunpei Yokoi and carried on by the NES Zapper, these light guns were actually sensors and a photodiode sensor connected to a lens that could detect a timed, bright flash of light. The game would black out the screen, but for only one frame, and draw a white box over any valid targets. And if the gun was pointed at a target, its sensor would detect the rapid change from black to white, and the game would register a hit or a miss depending on what shape the sensor was pointed at. Later on, more accurate light guns used the CRT screen's raster timing. The light gun's sensor diode would detect the precise moment that the electron beam passed in front of it, and by calculating the elapsed time, the console could determine the exact XY coordinate where the light gun was pointed. Now, both of these light gun methods are fundamentally incompatible with modern displays. Plasma, LCD, and OLED screens lack the scanning electron beam, and their pixels refresh basically nearly simultaneously, providing no timing reference. This is made worse by the unpredictable input lag introduced by digital signal processing in many LCD screens. This completely desynchronized the trigger pull from the on-screen flash, making the detection methods impossible. From Duck Hunt and Hogan's Alley to Operation Wolf, Time Crisis, and House of the Dead, these games are completely unplayable on modern LCD screens using original hardware. A CRT TV isn't just better for these games, it's the only way that these light gun games function. And if you want to enjoy a key piece of Nintendo history, the Famicom Robot, aka Rob the Robot, you gotta get a CRT TV because Rob is basically a light gun accessory that is controlled by light flashes made by the CRT screen. Also thanks to Gunpei Yokoi. Video game light guns were a thing in Japan, but they weren't a freaking huge hit like in the US. Duck Hunt was a killer app for early NES hardware. The combination of selling the NES system with Super Mario Bros. And Duck Hunt on the same cartridge was a 1-2 knockout punch. So my dad wouldn't play an NES game using a control pad, but he just loved playing Duck Hunt with the Zapper. And Sega wasn't going to be outdone. The Sega Light Phaser was often packed in with a Sega Master System and was a key part of the experience. It's not just the best way to play. A CRT TV is the only game in town for original light guns. And you can take my light guns when you pry them from my cold, dead hands. Two of my favorite comic book art techniques are dithering and hatching. This is when black and white drawings will have dots or lines, and they are angled at tighter densities, and it will create shading. So it creates perspective and a sense of depth between two areas where technically none exists. It's still just black ink on a page. So classic retro video games often had similar restrictions. The name 8-bit refers to 8-bit data, and 16-bit refers to 16-bit data. Often, these were used in color lookup tables, and there was a hard limit on the amount of colors available for artists and programmers to use, and that's where dithering comes in. So, you could arrange blue pixels on a grid with dots of red to create a purple area, something the limited color lookup table otherwise couldn't allow. So, dithering uses lines or dots which are then blurred by the NTSC signal. It's more pronounced on composite AV video or RF video, which were a little more noisy and less crisp connections, but most people used those in the 1980s. The Nintendo Entertainment System and the Sega Genesis did not ship with composite AV cables. They supported composite AV, but not in the box. Higher quality analog connection standards like Component and S-Video provide a much sharper picture across multiple video connections than one cable. And they will show the dithering as sharp or unblurred, not as blended like RF or composite TV video. And on an LCD TV, it's going to come across as a pixel-perfect pattern of grids or stripes. And you're going to see a raw, unblended checkerboard pattern. But on a CRT TV, the phosphors glow and the softness of the composite video signal will work their magic, merging the pixels into a blended color or a transparent effect. So, Naoto Oshima, the artist on Sonic the Hedgehog, said, "Back then, the TVs were CRTs, and with the Mega Drive's limited number of colors, we'd use that blurriness to create intermediate colors. The most iconic example of this is Sonic the Hedgehog. The waterfalls in Green Hill Zone are just alternating blue and white stripes, but the CRT's color blending melds them into a single, shimmering, pseudo-transparent graphic effect. In Streets of Rage 2, the club's spotlights are created using a similar shimmering, transparent effect. In Earthworm Jim, the water levels take transparency to a whole new level. In Castlevania Bloodlines, this graphic technique is used for translucency and other graphic features that really push the Genesis and Mega Drive hardware beyond the limitations of the 16-bit color palette. And the Sega Genesis video encoder provides a slightly non-standard NTSC signal that generated exactly 228 color cycles per scan line. This is opposed to the broadcast standard of 227.5. This made the color bleeding and blending effects on the Sega Genesis composite output stable and predictable. The Super Nintendo could display more colors than the Sega Genesis, so dithering wasn't used quite as extensively. The Sega Genesis, however, leaned into it heavily. CRT TVs have near-instant photon-to-eyeball response times. The analog signal coming from the game console goes straight to the electron gun, and the image is drawn on the screen with no input lag. There is no digital signal processing causing a delay between your button pressing on the controller and the game console reacting. It is a direct draw display system. The analog signal from the game console directly controls the electron gun in real time with no digital signal processing or buffering. And there is no humanly perceivable input lag. The CRT screen updates in near instant real time. At a 60 Hz refresh rate, it takes the electron beam approximately 16.7 milliseconds or 1/60th of a second to draw the image top to the bottom on the screen. This is a predictable physical constant and not a variable delay. In contrast, a modern LCD has a cumulative and often variable digital signaling processing pipeline that can add anywhere between 15 milliseconds and sometimes over 200 milliseconds of lag before its own panel scanout even begins. There's an image processing computational checklist. There is analog to digital conversions, deinterlacing, and then scaling, and then image enhancement. Each of these steps adds processing time, and it adds up to a cumulative delay. And especially if you have extra motion processing or motion smoothing enabled on your TV. A TV's game mode helps improve this, but it doesn't solve it completely. This latency isn't noticeable when you're watching movies or streaming, but on video games that rely on precise, instant feedback, it can be crippling. It's so important for precision gameplay, where every frame matters. This matters in music games. Early games like Guitar Hero didn't fare well and actually had some lag compensation tools built into the game. And if you're going to try and do split-second jumping through bricks techniques or take advantage of Super Mario Bros. Glitches that require split-second timing, if you're going to try to do the infinite lives trick in Super Mario Bros., you gotta get that CRT screen. And if you're going to try to beat Mike Tyson in Punch-Out, you need split-second timing. If you're really into high-level Street Fighter, again, a CRT screen is what you want. And if you're into competitive speedrun, they're all using CRT screens because of this direct draw that you're only going to get on a CRT. This is what people gave up for LCD screens. Trying to play Punch-Out on original hardware on an LCD TV is a losing fight. By the time the screen updates show up, the digital Mike Tyson has already seen your moves and reacted, and you're going to get knocked out by that input lag. This next part gets a little technical with terms like impulse and sample and hold, but stick with me, because this is the secret why motion looks so incredibly clear on a CRT TV. Now, a CRT is an impulse display, while an LCD screen is a sample and hold display. Modern screens hold the image still for your eyes, and this causes blur when things move. CRTs flash the image like a strobe light. It means when Sonic runs, he stays razor sharp. On a CRT TV, the electron gun excites a phosphor coating on the inside of the vacuum-sealed tube, causing it to glow for a very brief moment, usually 1 or 2 milliseconds before fading to black. Our eyes and brains perceive this rapid succession of impulses as a continuous moving image. On an LCD TV, the pixel is illuminated and holds its color and brightness state for the entire duration of the frame, around 16.7 milliseconds for a 60 Hz signal. In pursuit of a perfectly stable, flicker-free image, modern LCD displays eliminated the brief black period between frames, which was inherent to CRT operation. However, that rapid decay of the phosphor's glow and is why a standard 60 Hz NTSC CRT is going to have greater motion clarity than a 120 LCD screen that isn't using specialized strobing. Any game with fast scrolling backgrounds like Super Mario or Sonic or a shmup shooter turn into a smeary mess on an LCD TV display. And the same game stays perfectly crisp on a CRT TV. This is super important with bullet hell shooters. Now, the CRT TV's brief black interval between frames effectively resets our eye's perception with each new frame, and it eliminates motion blur. LCD screens have only recently started using black frame insertion to try and bring about motion clarity. Running at 120 frames with black frame insertion is almost as good as 60 Hz on a CRT display. And that's without any processing, trying to give you any phosphor glow or fake Scanlines. I'll get to CRT filters later on and all the things that LCDs try to do to be as cool as a CRT TV. Now, the benefits of CRT displays doesn't stop with the 8-bit and 16-bit era. Early 3D games for the PlayStation 2, the Sega Saturn, the N64, and even the Sega Dreamcast is arguably where having a CRT screen becomes even more important. These early 3D graphics were done in notorious low resolutions, and they were often pretty jaggy, especially software rendering on the Sega Saturn, which was being done at 320 by 240 pixels. The razor sharpness of a 4K display is unflattering, bringing light to this era. It shows every blocky polygon and wobbly texture on the PlayStation 1 in incredibly unflattering detail. These modern high-resolution displays can make the imperfections and chunkiness of low-resolution 3D renderings show up. 3D models and textures are more obvious, and the effect can be pretty jarring. On a CRT TV, however, the natural softening and pixel blending just works absolute wonders on early 3D graphics. It makes the images look cohesive and is so much better at hiding the imperfections. Now, this helps make low-poly character models with gorgeous pre-rendered backgrounds like in Final Fantasy VII and Resident Evil 1 and 2 look even better. And it's not just 3D games. CRTs show these beautiful cinematic compositions just as the artists intended. The character portraits in Castlevania Symphony of the Night are smoothed by this very effect. And the low bitrate and heavy video compression used in cinematic cutscene videos are also helped by this. And some early 3D games took advantage of the 60 Hz mode, such as Tobal No. 1, and it comes across as incredibly crisp with detailed motion. The simple 3D mapping of polygons or garage shading looks absolutely wonderful on a CRT screen, and games like Tekken 3, which use interlacing, can come across like an absolute hot, wet dumpster fire on an LCD screen, while this game comes across as fluid and stunning on a CRT screen. Probably the biggest example of this is my favorite early racing game, Wipeout on the PlayStation. Wipeout XL, and Wipeout 3 are absolutely gorgeous on a CRT TV, and they are badly drawn messes on an LCD TV. A CRT is required to take you to that PlayStation 1 cyberscape. When I see PlayStation 1 graphics on an LCD TV, it's just a chunky mess. The magic is gone. And it didn't just end with the PlayStation 1, because the PlayStation 2 was also designed to take advantage of an analog signal driving a CRT display. And the Sega Saturn, with its incredible 2D games library, is just a thing of beauty on a CRT TV. I'll take the Pepsi challenge on just how a game looks between a standard LCD TV and a low-end CRT, because it's going to look a lot better on a CRT TV. It's just the way the art was intended to be displayed. It's not about the specs, it's about how the art looks. It's about how the whole experience feels. So another thing that doesn't get talked about enough is the whole vibe. The physical presence and sensory experience of a CRT and what it does to a room. CRTs just radiate this cozy, nostalgic warmth. It's figurative, but it's also literal. When the glass tube is shot at by the electron gun, it actually generates a minor static electrical charge, which can make the hairs stand up on your arm. The gentle curve of the screen draws you in and focuses your attention. People used to design their entire living room around these things. They are a bulky beast and a functional conversation piece. CRTs are cool, different, and a functional piece of history. Even a small one has an incredible presence and starts a conversation in a way that a bezel-less flat screen from Walmart never will. It is a time machine, and if you care aesthetically about the room that you play video games in, there is no ultimate gamer move more hardcore than getting a freaking 100-pound monstrous box of glass, plastic, and lightning. CRTs are that. I get a lot more retro Showa era vibes from my CRT TV than I ever would from a big sterile shelf of boxed video game. I like my cartridges in my hand and in my system and playing on a CRT TV. And this all taps into nostalgia. CRTs were a fixture in the homes of Gen Xers and Millennials, and often they evoke strong, overwhelmingly positive childhood memories. It is instantly nostalgic, right down to the sound that the TV makes when it turns on, the feel of the remote in your hand, and how it comes alive as a little CRT gremlin fire up that electron gun. It recreates the childhood sleepover feeling and the Saturday morning cartoon magic. Having a CRT provides this incredible dopamine nostalgia hit that captures how games felt as a kid. And this is because you're using the equipment that you used as a kid. Playing a classic video game with a CRT is using a technology as old as the game itself. These older consoles were made to run on these monsters, these epic CRT beasts, and they literally don't make them like this anymore. Another thing about LCD TVs is that they're super thin, and they don't have space for speakers. So it's almost completely necessary to have separate speakers, a soundbar, or wireless speakers. But do you know what television doesn't need that? CRT TVs. Because the sound from a CRT can come from its own full-size speakers, creating an authentic sensory sound experience. JVC and Sony TVs have freaking phenomenal speakers in them. It's not rocket science, but large CRTs have space to have really big speakers. Super thin, teeny tiny LCDs have teeny tiny speakers. And yeah, there's the 15.7 kilohertz whine, which is the sound of the flyback transformer getting warmed up and ready to go. Some little kids and teenagers can hear that, but it usually goes away once the flyback transformer in a CRT gets going. But if you're old enough to remember cigarette vending machines, then chances are you're not going to be able to hear that. The dreaded CRT whine is nothing to write home about, nothing to fear. It's not just video games. Classic movies on VHS look incredible on a CRT. Anime looks incredible. Old cartoons looks incredible. Matching the format that they were originally viewed on. It's all part of that integrated analog experience that highlights that tactile, ritualistic aspect of the experience. And if you get into VHS, the physical act of inserting a VHS tape creates this self-contained, authentic experience media event that is totally lost in the age of disembodied digital streaming. The technical argument is that a low-resolution analog media like a VHS tape just comes alive when you display them on a CRT TV. They have appropriate corresponding characteristics. A CRT's inherent softness and its analog nature are more forgiving to these low-fidelity video sources. And it presents the image in a way which is more cohesive and aligned with how the video was originally intended to be viewed. It also provides a much simpler way to watch physical media without having to navigate streaming menus. And you can even go an extra step and get TVs with a built-in VCR, and they're amazing. You know what? I'll have to make an entire video on the joy of VHS tapes, and I'll do that in the future. So you better subscribe and be kind, rewind. Last year, I made a video about the CRT hunt as part of the hobby. So people aren't just fascinated with retro video games, but the whole process of collecting them. Hunting them on marketplaces, at garage sales, vintage malls, and thrift shops. So, retro culture celebrates the process of finding the historical golden nuggets of retro goodness, and CRT TVs are that. Last year, I made a 45-minute video on the marketplace negotiation and logistical challenges of transporting a heavy CRT TV. So, this adds a layer of adventure and personal investment into the ownership experience of a CRT TV that is just absent from having the Amazon delivery guy deliver a box with a flat LCD TV inside. Now, one of the reasons why people are more nostalgic for vintage furniture is that it has a story attached to them. Flat pack is fine for furniture and for getting a blowhigh blue shark, but not for televisions that have a soul. And embracing the hunt is part of the story. You know, another strong motivation in getting and using CRT TVs is that you get to keep them out of the landfill. Disposing of CRT TVs in normal garbage is often illegal and is environmentally hazardous due to the leaded glass and other toxic materials that they contain within. A lot of CRT TVs and electronic recycling is just shipped off to China and isn't quite as environmentally sound as you would think. Many people go to electronic recycling places to get free CRTs. By saving a CRT from a landfill, you're not only getting an awesome display for retro video games, but you're going to be a part of a grassroots effort to preserve this functional technology and history and to keep them out of your city dump. You know, not to get all hug a tree and save the earth, but I do live in Portland, Oregon, and my dad is an environmental chemist from back when the EPA had a bite. It's worth noting that these TVs can be incredibly heavy and contain high voltage components, so transport them upright and be careful when moving them. Also, don't open them up without knowing exactly what you're getting yourself into. And you gotta use proper ergonomics. Lift with your legs and hold the TV close to your body and get help. It's not worth a hernia, a back injury, or a broken bone in your foot, or a ruptured disc just to get and move a CRT. Now, a big Trinitron can easily top 150 pounds, and after that, the only thing that you're going to be lifting is some Tylenol. Seriously, these things make the original Xbox look like a Game Boy Pocket. So plan your transportation, use a dolly, and get a friend to help you. And you can usually bribe them with some tacos, pizza, and donuts. Getting a CRT TV is a commitment to retro gaming. It is a major long-term solution and a sign that you are committed to growing your collection of retro games and the hardware to play them. And a CRT TV is often a way better investment than having to deal with these converters for each game system. And freaking retro tinks and HDMI adapters really add up. It's incredible how much money you have to throw at them to try to get a pseudo-retro experience on an LCD TV. You get a high-quality, authentic retro gaming experience just by getting a CRT TV. You know, there is a huge cottage industry of hardware scalers like RetroTink products that start at $140 and go all the way up to $750. And there are various hardware console mods that try to put digital signal processors into classic retro game systems to try to coax a digital signal out of them. And then you have software shaders in RetroArch that try to simulate the effects of scanlines, phosphor masks, and screen curvature. But they don't quite do it just right. They're always a little off, and no matter how you squint, you're just not gonna get your LCD TVs to look as good as a real CRT TV. They're chasing the analog dragon, the ghost of that analog magic. And the very fact that an expensive industry exists with a primary goal of making LCD screens try to look a fraction of how good CRTs look, that lets you know of the incredible value that CRTs hold. There was something lost with a switch to digital television. The very existence of this expensive market is the ultimate proof of the CRT's value. Their visual output is the aesthetic benchmark that modern technology is actively trying to reverse engineer. High-end FPGA devices like Mister look phenomenal when hooked up to a CRT, and upcoming systems like Taki Udon's Superstation 1 are being designed from the ground up with high-quality analog specifically for these TVs. So even the most cutting-edge retro hardware acknowledges that CRTs are the ultimate display. And it's not just about the money, it's about the complexity. You can easily end up going down a rabbit hole of different cables, settings, firmware updates, and troubleshooting why one console looks great and the other looks garbage. And a CRT TV just works. You just plug in a console and it comes on and looks exactly the way it was meant to be seen. It is beautifully simple. So, are you really going to spend nearly $800 on RGB cables and a RetroTink 4K? Or are you going to give a dude $40 and get a CRT TV? The choice is yours. So, is it just about nostalgia? All the love for a cathode ray tube television is recognition that they are an irreplaceable part of the experience playing original retro video games. It's all about accuracy. It's about seeing video game art the way that the artist intended. It's about the scanlines, the phosphor glow, the blending, the dithering. These aren't technical limitations, they're part of the canvas. Developers used CRT technology's unique properties to push their gaming hardware to the absolute limit. It was the final link in a single, unbroken analog system of video game awesomeness. The console, the cable, and screen all worked together to create the final image. And you could interact with it with a button press at the speed of light, and it would draw using an electron gun in a matter of milliseconds. And on an LCD screen with all its processing, it can't even come close to that raw analog speed. Modern tech can give you an imitation, but it's still an imitation. But for that definitive, unaltered, more authentic retro experience the way that the artists and the engineers actually intended it to be delivered to us, the CRT TV is the unbeaten champion. And they're not making these TVs anymore. Every day they end up in landfills. So the time to get one, preserving a piece of retro gaming history, is now. And you deserve it. And if you are carving out your own personal retro game collection, you gotta go the extra mile and get a CRT TV. You don't even have to get a big one, but you deserve to have a good time and to play retro video games. And it instantly takes you back to 1995, 1985, and sitting down in front of a CRT TV is going to be a lot more effective into tricking your brain that it's retro video game dopamine time if there's a CRT bringing you Mario or Sonic. So get out there and find one and see what you've been missing. You deserve to experience these games the way they were meant to be played. So what do you think? Do you agree with all of my reasons? Did I get it wrong? Let me know down in the comments. And what is one game that you absolutely must play on a CRT TV? So I've been making the switch from weekly videos to longer, more in-depth videos like this one, so you better subscribe to make sure that you don't miss them. And if you can, give this video a YouTube hype to get it seen by more people. Thanks for watching. This is 8-Bit Joystick. Stay awesome, play retro, and get a CRT TV.